All right, welcome back to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I'm Samuel Timothy.
And I'm Taylor Rowe. Today we're talking about why your marketing strategy is failing. We see a lot of companies that are failing in some of the most basic and fundamental efforts when it comes to their marketing strategy. So we give you 3 do's and don'ts of your marketing when it comes to traditional efforts, digital efforts, and also experiential. So please give us a like, subscribe to the podcast. Let's dive right in. All right, Samuel. Here we are in 2023, and we work with a lot of different companies, and honestly, we see a lot of mistakes that are being made. So we wanted to make a special episode about some do's and don'ts when it comes to your marketing and your marketing strategy. So the way that we broke this up for you listening and of course watching, we're going to break into 3 sections, traditional, digital, and experiential in terms of the types of marketing mistakes, do's and don'ts that we see. So Sam, let's start with digital. I know there's a lot of mistakes, so it's probably hard to just pick one. But what is the first don't or the first no-no when it comes to digital marketing?
Yeah, I would say the number one thing I would just say is the going through the motion, because you see a lot of people, when you have conversation with them on what you're doing for digital, they have a templatized playbook on what they're doing. They say, "Hey, we write the blogs. We're writing blogs. We're creating, sending out newsletter. We're publishing on social media," and act as if they're doing a lot of activities, but it doesn't really amount to much. There's not much outcome to demonstrate for. So I think that's the number one don't that I would probably tell our customers or audience from a digital standpoint. Don't just go through the motion of doing a bunch of activities and calling it digital strategy or digital marketing.
Yeah, that's a great one. We see this all the time. People understand and they're starting to realize we do need digital marketing. So they look at the overall market, they look at their competitors, and they follow pretty much the same playbook, right? And like you said, just going through the motions, a lot of times spreading themselves very thin because they don't have the resources to try to write blogs and send emails and run ad campaigns. Don't have the budgets that are required to compete in Google or on Facebook or LinkedIn. They also feel like they need to post on social media. And so a lot of times, because they don't have the resources, they, as you mentioned, go through the motions, outsource somebody to write content and just share what other people are creating on social media so that they're active on social media. And then they get frustrated and say, well, we're doing all of this, right? We're doing SEO or we're writing blogs or we're posting on social. It's just not effective. So therefore it doesn't work in our industry, right? So on the flip side of that, what can you do in the digital space? Well, the opposite of going through the motions is really taking ownership and going deep, right? I would say my advice would be try to differentiate yourself. Because there's so much competition and everyone is seemingly going and following the same playbook and going through those motions, what can become your competitive advantage? What do you do really well at your company, and how can you convey that with the marketing resources that you have or the marketing partners that you have? If you're really good at explaining complicated topics, maybe you need to create a video series and really go deep in video and do everything you can to make that your competitive advantage, that our marketing we're going to be the best video marketers and using and leveraging that video in any way that we can on the channels that make sense for us, right? Rather than trying to do so much or trying to compete in a space that you don't really understand, I would say differentiate yourself and go deep into that differentiator.
Yeah, I think the human side of the brand needs to be demonstrated in every marketing efforts, especially on the digital side too. And I think, like you said, it's very easy to just have a lot of activities and feel like you're doing too many things. And then when you don't see the results, you write off that specific tactic as ineffective. But in fact, it's not necessarily the tactic; it's just the way you're approaching it. And I think one of the things that you just mentioned is very important, because I think a lot of times on the digital front, the biggest mistake is that people are trying to spread themselves too thin, doing blogging, trying to do some videos and doing all of those things, but no one area they have gotten any success. So instead of actually spreading yourselves too thin, just hone in on one area. If it's long form video, then actually use that as your competitive advantage. express your expertise, demonstrate your knowledge, and then you figure out how do you repurpose that one long form content into other channels, whether it be social or email or whatnot. And then just don't be just reposting and commenting on other people's content. You have to be, I often tell my kids, don't just be a consumer, be a creator, be a producer, right? So you want to be producing as well, that are original thought, original ideas.
Right. And we saw this this year in particular, last year, with TikTok, right? We saw so many brands and individuals and companies explode in that channel, when they probably historically were trying all the different channels and different tactics, and they really went all in on, one channel that had maybe a little bit less saturation, and it gave them that creative outlet to capture that audience. So we don't know, in 2023 if there's going to be a new channel that you could explore, but the same principles can apply, right? Find out where you want to go all in, and go all in that one channel. So let's move on to the next section, if you will, of our marketing. So we looked at digital. So now let's look at traditional. And maybe this is something that you wouldn't expect on a digital marketing podcast, but it is something that we feel like we should explore a little bit, because there's a lot of companies that are investing in traditional. So what are some mistakes, or what's a big don't when it comes to traditional marketing?
Yeah, I think, with the advent of digital medium, right, there's been a lot of investment into the digital channels. You have the power of targeting the right people at the right time on the right time with the right message on digital platform, that more and more businesses were investing into the digital medium, but I think at the expense of ignoring the traditional medium, right? So I think that's where I would say, don't do that. Don't ignore the traditional medium as a viable channel to reach your target audience. That could be very extremely effective. Couple of use cases would be like, hey, you are using digital channels to get visitors to your website. They are coming in, consuming your content or looking at your product or whatnot. Are there traditional mediums that you can leverage to continue that conversation or continue their interest? By whether it be using direct mail, all sorts of other mediums that are out there that are traditional that you could be leveraging to stay top of mind with your target audience.
Yeah. So I would say in terms of a do for that, exactly what you said. And to summarize it, I think find ways to cut through the noise. So many digital channels are oversaturated, and we look at trends in marketing. We talk about this all the time. Our goal as marketers is really to find the most effective and efficient way to get in front of our audience and communicate with them, right? To educate them. So digital quickly became a very great way to do that because of what you just said, the targeting capabilities, the cost, but it's so oversaturated now that sometimes we get lost in the shuffle and we get lost in the noise. So I agree with your don't ignore traditional, because if you go back to answer that question of what's the most effective and efficient way to get in front of them, maybe that is a direct mail piece, or maybe you can marry together some digital and traditional efforts like retargeting direct mail. There's a lot of companies out there that do like reverse IP lookups and those type of things to say, hey, we're running these campaigns, running these ads to get people to our website. And once they're on our website, they're looking at specific products or services, we can automatically and dynamically send them a direct mail piece that we know they're going to open, right? Even if they throw it away right away, at least they opened it. Whereas open rates on emails are so low, and you could even say most of them end up in spam, right? So I would say there are still traditional channels that can be very valuable, and maybe even more valuable in this year and next year, because so many companies are moving away from traditional channels. So look at your industry, look at your customers, and brainstorm some traditional tactics, traditional marketing efforts that may be successful for you.
Yeah, I mean, especially if your customer lifetime value is pretty incredible, and your typically your cost of acquisition is pretty high in your industry, then you're leveraging traditional medium isn't something you need to be afraid of. Like you said, I think we've noticed our customers are using very very customized to custom boxes as welcome kits or introductory boxes that they're sending to their customers to get them interested in. I've noticed, even I have received several companies that are in the SaaS industry sending me books with the note cards inside and getting my attention that way, because they try to send me cold emails and it hasn't worked, and they probably have tried show display ads and that didn't work. So they're like, hey, let me try to send this guy a book and then get their attention, right? So that's a traditional a channel, like, sending somebody something of value, and then now you have an interest in wanting to explore a little bit more about what they're trying to get your attention from.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. The average customer value is something you need to look at. Also, the total addressable market, right? Because ABM has become such a buzzword and something that companies are looking after. Yes, let's set some target accounts and go after them. But we've also had conversations with companies that they believe their total addressable market is like 4 or 5 companies, right? It's so small that it, you're almost overthinking it when you're talking about how do we target them on social. It's like show up at their door, right? There's only 4 of them. So there's things like that, and obviously that's an extreme example, but I think you look at your total addressable market and look at your lifetime value, and you look at your current cost of acquisition. Obviously, digitally, that's just going to continue to increase with the cost of ads and going up, cost per click going up, cost per impression. So maybe there's some traditional ways that you can cut through that noise and bring down your cost of acquisition by, like you said, giving them something unique and paying a little bit more to get in front of them than you would digitally, but have a bigger impact. All right, so our third section here when we talk about digital, traditional, is experiential, right? So experiential marketing is something that's becoming more and more popular, I would say, in terms of defining that category. Experiences has always been a part of marketing, but things are changing in the way that we have those experiences. So what is a mistake or a don't when it comes to experiential marketing?
Yeah, I would say indexing on some sort of an outdated strategy, right? Or, just essentially just saying, hey, our customers are always going to these trade shows. Our competitors exhibit at this trade show, so we're going to go to this trade show. Could be like one way to look at it, right? I would say that's what I would call like a don't from an experiential standpoint. Just because somebody else is doing it, I'm just going to do that. That would be my big no from an experiential standpoint.
Yeah, we see this all the time. We just talked about traditional, but companies applying outdated tactics to new age channels and go-to-market strategies, right? And we've talked in other podcasts around product-led and community-led and all this type of different marketing strategies, if you will. And experiential marketing is something that a lot of companies are really trying to dive into and create unique customer experiences for prospects and customers. But as you mentioned, applying those outdated tactics of saying, okay, and it almost goes back to what we talked about going through the motions. It's just checking the box of we want to create experiences for our customers. Okay, what does that look like? Well, let's just go to this trade show and overpay for a booth and collect a list of emails and throw them into a sequence after the trade show and maybe get one customer from the whole ordeal. And we spent 5 or 6 days of time with our product team, or sales team, or engineers, or whoever went to the trade show, and it just really is not that valuable and doesn't create lasting experiences for your customers, right? So instead, look at creative ways you can give your audience value and make your customers feel special, right? So if you think about small, intimate, interactive sessions, settings with either prospects or customers or a combination of the two. We've seen a lot of companies do, let's say, expert panel discussions in a small, intimate setting where you have food and appetizers and drinks and maybe a game show type of experience with a panel discussion, as I mentioned, with maybe a mixture of 10 prospects and customers, right? Something like that where you can provide value, or if your audience has similar interests, or there's some synergies between your customers, bring them together in a way that creates a lasting experience and makes them feel valued, makes them feel like you're thinking on behalf of their customer, you understand their industry, and you can provide value. At the end of the day, that's our job as marketers, right? To make them feel valued, give them some value, educate them on something or illuminate something that you can help through your product or service. So I think there's a sales team has traditionally done a lot of this, right, in terms of like customer dinners, and I think a dinner is probably a bad way to you got to get creative in terms of how you have those conversations and those discussions. But there's certainly creative ways that you could create those experiences for your customers, and I think again this can fall more in a marketing bubble than under sales team.
Yeah, and especially if your organization has executive team that have reputation in the marketplace, being some sort of an industry leader, bringing those people or bringing some reputable person in the industry as a spokesperson to come and talk at the event, give them a reason for to show up, not just to learn about your product or how your product can help them, but something a little bit more value. And then also people love networking with other peers in the industry. So if you're creating a more of an intimate setting, they know that they will have a much better chance of connecting with people in the space and building relationships. And like you said, trade shows are extremely, we're not saying ignore trade shows. I think it's still very effective in getting your word out and getting in front of your target customers. But it doesn't give you the intimate connections that you need to move the deals forward and move the relationships forward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What it doesn't give you the opportunity to do is, lead the conversation or create any sort of community, right? Because it's the opposite of intimate. There's tens of thousands of people there a lot of times, and so just think outside the box and take those budgets maybe that you were going to spend on a trade show and flights and hotels and those type of things, and really wow your customers in a smaller, more intimate setting with a similar budget or maybe even less.
Most certainly. Yeah, I think a couple of things that we may have also wanted to just give us examples on some of these other channels. I would say on the traditional front and maybe even on the experiential front, we're starting to see B2B companies embracing influencer marketing. We've noticed several of our own customers, and we've seen some effective brands that are actually leveraging influencers, sending them product samples or sending them custom boxes to create a buzz around the brand or a product launch or some sort of a feature, and getting attention from them, and then obviously them sharing their experience to their followers, which has traditionally been done by B2C, right? And we're starting to see that being pretty useful medium for B2B organizations.
That's really what an influencer is. But in the business world, you look at it as subject matter experts. So you can either build that internally, you have your people become those subject matter experts or thought leaders, conversation leaders, or you tap into somebody who's already seen as a trusted advisor in your industry, and again have them kind of preach the value of your organization.
Yeah, and one other idea that I would probably say is you've probably seen it with some of the tech and SaaS companies doing it. If they don't have internal subject matter experts that are today is able to create content, or they don't have the time and means to do it, they're hiring dedicated resources that are just on the content topic research and creation of content, or the wallet size is big enough that they're actually going and acquiring publications that really speak to their audience. We've seen that time and time again. HubSpot bought several podcast companies, and you saw Outreach buying Sales Hacker, and there's a lot of publications like that being acquired by tech and SaaS companies. So if you don't have already the access to the audience that you're trying to break into, then maybe you need to invest heavily into building a team internally that can actually go create content, or buy a publication that already has that audience and then leverage that audience to grow your customers. So that could also be a digital strategy and digital and somewhat traditional.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, hopefully you all found some value in our conversation today. If there are some do's and don'ts that you see in the market that you want to share with us, please feel free to comment, send us an email. And if there's any other topics that you want us to cover in the future, please don't hesitate to reach out. Please give us a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this episode with a friend or a colleague who needs to hear the message. And tune in next week.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by One IMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, one web, one IMS.